Hello, and thank you for viewing the ACP Monitoring Documentation Index tutorial. The purpose of this video is to provide an overview of the ACP Monitoring Documentation Index. The intent of the ACP Documentation Index is to provide organization to the monitoring documentation submitted to your grants management specialist that will facilitate a timely review of the ACP award information. The purpose of monitoring is to ensure a proper use of ACP funds per federal and program requirements. Your FCC GMS sent a monitoring engagement letter to your AOR or PIPD identifying what kind of monitoring is to be conducted, desk or financial. The monitoring letters here are an example of those that would be received for desk or financial monitoring. While the documentation requirements are not the same for desk versus financial monitoring, the process for collecting, organizing, and submitting monitoring documentation is the same. Attached to your monitoring engagement letter is the monitoring process documentation checklist. This is completed by your grants management specialist to indicate which documents are required for monitoring. Also attached to your monitoring engagement letter is the Monitoring Documentation Index. The index will assist recipients organize the information before it's submitted to their GMS using Grant Solutions. Due to the number of documents that are required for monitoring, the Documentation Index is a tool for recipients to name and track the submissions of electronic files. This index will serve as a roadmap, ensuring consistency for recipients and the GMS during the monitoring process. The Documentation Index has 3 tabs in the workbook instructions: References and the File Index. There is an Instructions tab that details the steps you'll need to take to complete the Documentation Index. The most important step in the documentation collection process is naming the files using a naming convention. Why are we using a naming convention? It's so that the recipients and their GMS can identify which documents were submitted and that they can be looking at the same documents using the same language. Using the index will help facilitate that. The Monitoring Documentation Index file name includes your grants number, the document type, the number of documents that you are including or uploading, and then a name that you describe the contents to the file as the file name. Each file will need to be associated with a documentation type, and definitions for each document type is listed in the Reference tab in the Documentation Index. Here is a partial list of the document types. Also, here's an example of what the file names would look like following the naming convention. There's the grant number, there's the document type, there's the number of documents, and then there's a file name. So using the PDFs as examples, there are 3 sets of invoices submitted. They're each numbered 1, 2, and 3, and then they're differentiated by date. But you can use whatever file name that applies based on the file contents. After saving all of the monitoring documentation following the naming convention, recipients will enter the documentation information into the index, which is in the 3rd tab provided in the workbook. The document type information is also preloaded as a drop-down menu in the index. Additionally, recipients will include a document description to the index to provide context for the information submitted. Please note that you can always add additional rows to this Excel worksheet just as you would for any Excel document. However, please do not add any columns to this document. Once the files are organized and the monitoring index document is completed, the information will be uploaded into Grant Solution as a grants note. Please note that only one copy of the completed documentation index is to be submitted. However, depending on the number of documents you have, you may be submitting more than one Grants Notes in Grant Solution. Included on this slide is guidance for uploading documents via Grants Notes. Additionally, on this slide is a link to the Grant Solutions Help Desk. You have to be logged into the Grant Solutions website in order to access this information, but it has a quick refresh guide for submitting Grants Notes. Grant Solutions requires files to be uploaded individually, but the documentation index is to be uploaded once for monitoring purposes. Please note that zip files and other compressed files are not accepted by Grant Solutions. When you're submitting Grants Notes, you will need to include a subject line, and that will be monitoring documentation. You will select correspondence for the note type, and then the category type should be other. The description required by Grant Solutions can be the same as the file description in the index. Once you have uploaded documentation to the Grants Notes, selecting the Upload button is essential. When you're ready to submit your Grants Notes, ensure you select the Submit button. Once you have uploaded all of the documentation and submitted the Grants Notes, an email will be sent to your GMS, who can then start reviewing the monitoring documentation. Your GMS will reach out if there are any questions or missing documents from your submission. This concludes the Monitoring Index tutorial. Thank you for your attention and cooperation as FCC conducts its monitoring. For more information, please contact your GMS or the ACP Grants team at acpgrants@fcc.gov. Thank you.